Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the next in our F1 student webinar series with hot topics and immigration here. And we are talking about another great topic today, pre-OPT. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in and learn a little bit more about pre-OPT. So here's what we're going to be talking about today. This is what's on the agenda for us. So first of all, let's talk about what is pre-OPT exactly. Then we're going to talk about one academic year. That's going to be a very important requirement for your pre-OPT if that's something you're considering. And then above and beyond that, we're going to talk about some other eligibility requirements, and then a little bit more about the application process. And then I think we'll have some time for some commonly asked questions at the end as well. Let's just see. So, start off with what is pre-OPT exactly? Well, it's part of the 12 months of OPT, which all F1 students have the opportunity to be able to pursue 12 months of optional practical training. Now, pre-OPT is used during studies, which is unlike post-OPT, which is going to be for after graduation. So that's where that difference is. Pre versus post-completion OPT. Pre is during studies, before graduation. So when do you use pre-OPT? So it's ideal for work during your studies if CPT is not going to be available and the job is going to be within your study period. So there are some limitations, so we'll go over that in a bit here, but there's a full-time versus a part-time authorization, certain circumstances and times under which you can be part-time and full-time. We'll go over a little bit more of that in just a bit here. Now, in terms of the importance of it, it does provide that work authorization during studies and allows for that practical experience and enhancing your academic and professional growth. And that's really what practical training, whether curricular or optional, is really designed to do. So that is the importance of OPT in general, and especially pre-OPT. Now, in terms of that one academic year requirement, so you need to keep in mind that F1 students need to spend one academic year as a full-time student at a degree program in the United States before being eligible for any kind of practical training, whether it be CPT or pre-OPT. So again, one academic year, full-time in a degree program in the United States. So some potential uh, scenarios that may not be as clear or as straightforward in that for students who are transferring to ASU from another institution. Now, you may be able to count full-time enrollment of previous institution toward that year if there wasn't a gap in study. And similarly, for students who have had full-time study in the U.S. on another status other than F1, but have changed their status and are now in F1, now that's a possibility to count that time too. Of course, if you think you're in either of those situations, you definitely want to talk to someone here at ISSC. We can confirm, but that may be an option for you. But again, in one way or another, as you can see, that one academic year requirement is going to have to be fulfilled to be considered for eligibility. Now, above and beyond that, though, the eligibility requirements are first, here we go. We want to repeat it again because it's very important. Maintenance of your F1 status for a minimum of one academic year in a degree program. Now, kind of along those lines, and also very, very important, students must maintain full-time enrollment requirements in general while on pre-OPT. So pre-OPT does not allow a student to not meet their other full-time enrollment requirements. So all of your immigration all works together. It's all one status, all working for you. So it's just as important to maintain your other full-time enrollment requirements while on pre-OPT to maintain your immigration status in general. Now, in terms of the pre-OPT in particular, the employment that you work on must be directly related to your field of study. Now, an offer letter is not going to be required, but in terms of proving that exactly, but definitely do keep that in mind that your employment must be directly related to your field of study. Now, in terms of allowable work hours, this is where we talked a little bit about the difference between part-time and full-time. So we'll split it up during the fall and the spring semesters versus the summer and the winter break, because when you're in the regular semesters, when it's fall or spring, 20 hours is going to be your max in terms of this. Now, in terms of when you're on a break, when you're on summer session or winter break, it's going to be 40 hours is going to be allowed under those circumstances. So just something to keep in mind there. Now, what is the application process for pre-OPT? So, step one, you're going to want to submit your pre-OPT e-form to ISSC. So, the full title pre-OPT I-20 request e-form, you're going to use that. It's going to be in our ISSC e-form portal, and that's going to have to be no more than 97 days before your job starts. Now, there's reason for that because ISSC will issue your I-20 on or after the 90th day before your job starts. Reason for that is because if you submit an application for OPT more than 90 days before your job starts, in the case of pre-OPT, that would just be an automatic denial. It cannot be received any earlier than 90 days before the beginning. And the 7 days is because our process for the e-forms can take up to 7 business days. So that would be the earliest that we would have that be submitted to us here. So in order to get started with that process, you need to prepare these documents. You need your passport biographical page. That's going to be valid or have to be valid for at least 6 months in the future. Then your most recent I-94 arrival record. And then if you have them from previous experiences, the front and back of any prior EAD cards, if applicable. You may not have those. If you don't have them, we don't need them. But if you do have them, we do need them. Now, step two is going to be to receive your pre-OPT I-20 back from us here at ISSC. So let's skip ahead a little bit. We're imagining that you've submitted that process. You've gone through that process with us to submit our e-form. We've taken a look, everything looks good, and we've sent you an email to let you know that your pre-OPT I-20 is ready, and we're going to have instructions there for how to retrieve it. So you're also going to want to review the I-20 for accuracy and sign and date it in blue ink. You do have to print it out. You do have to sign it with a wet ink signature, and that wet ink signature must be blue. That is a requirement. Now, to get a paper copy, definitely check out our receiving documents webpage. That'll help you to be able to get the paper copy that you will need. And then step three is going to be to submit your application to USCIS. Now, you got to file your application within 30 days of the date the I-20 was issued. It's going to be a requirement. They're going to double check on that, make sure that's something that you do. In terms of where you file, we definitely recommend submitting online. So I believe there is still a way to do it over the mail. Don't really recommend doing that. Definitely want to submit it online. That just makes the process much easier. You're going to need to include a complete Form I-765. So if you submit online, that is actually what you're going to be submitting. It's an online version of the Form I-765, which if you are submitting it over the mail, it's an actual printout form, definitely just do the online version. Now, you're also going to need your updated I-20 with the OPT recommendation. That's what we're going to give to you as part of our process. And then you're going to need a passport style photo and copies of those. That's going to be what you need for your EID card. I'll talk about that in just a second, as well as your Form I-94 and some copies of that passport bio page. And then there is a fee associated with it that you'll have to pay to USCIS. And now, after submission, once you've submitted, you'll get a receipt from USCIS. You'll actually get a receipt notice. That will be your indication that it's been received and that it is being processed. And then, once you get that, you're just going to need to wait for approval. So processing can take a few months. If you are approved, you will get an EAD card back. And now, very important as well in terms of beginning your work. You can only start your work after you've received your EAD card and the start date has passed. So it's going to come with a particular start date. Both of those things must be true. You have to have the card in your hand, even if you think the start date has passed and you haven't quite gotten the card yet, can't start working. Conversely, even if you have the card in your hand, but the start date hasn't come around, you can't start working. You have to have a card in hand, and it has to be valid. That valid date has to be passed, or if it's on the date itself, you can start working on the very date that it says. Now here's the EAD card itself. So there's Sparky. We're using Sparky as an example, as if Sparky went out and got the EAD card. That's what it's actually going to look like there. Those dates are a little bit in the past there, but you can see those are the valid from and the expiry date there. So again, or imagine we're Sparky here. Sparky has the EAD card in hand, and the date is valid in this case, or we'll pretend that's the case. That would be when Sparky would know that it's okay to begin work. Now let's recap all that a little bit. So USCIS is the one that actually provides the approval in this instance. So you apply through us, we would recommend and request that for you, but USCIS provides the approval. And they authorize their approval via the employment authorization document, the EAD card that you get in hand here. And remember, pre-OPT is going to be during your degree program. And you're going to be subject to those full-time and part-time caps in terms of when the work is actually being performed, in terms of when the work is happening versus fall and spring semester versus break periods here. And that where we get into full-time versus part-time. Now, remember also only 12 months are going to be allowed when you're on OPT, and that's just going to be in general here. So different types of employment come into play here as well. And that's why it's important to be thinking about all the different types of employments here, because again, any time used on pre-OPT is going to be deducted from that 12 months that you ultimately might have the opportunity used on post-OPT. So just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about your whole plan here, if pre-OPT you think might be part of that plan. So let's think about some common questions here. What might you be asking yourself if you find yourself in this situation? So, kind of first question we typically think of in this situation is which authorization should you choose? Say that you have an employment opportunity, it's during your degree program. You're thinking about how you might want to get authorized for it. Which one should you choose? Well, if you are eligible for CPT, you can apply for CPT. But if not, pre-OPT is a good option as well, because it could be the case that you're not eligible for CPT, but you may really want to try this work authorization or this work opportunity that you want to get authorization for, as I should say it. And so pre-OPT would be an option for you. Now, if you're not sure, you should discuss your CPT eligibility with your academic advisor. Academic advisor would be the person to let you know if a particular employment opportunity might be eligible under CPT. Always good to start with your academic advisor. Now, that being said, in some academic programs, you might need to talk to a different person. There might be an internship coordinator, there might be a program coordinator, but your academic advisor is almost certainly going to know who the right person is to talk to. So I think this is just good advice in general about just about anything with the university life. But academic advisor, it's always good to have a conversation with that person. And it's especially true if you're thinking about any kind of work authorization. Always good to talk to your academic advisor. Now, above and beyond that, what do you do if your work ends before the end date on your EAD card? So, the employment authorization dates on the card, they're not mandatory. Now, I know I keep coming back to it. They are mandatory in terms of the start date. It is mandatory to wait till your start date comes around, but it is not mandatory to work all the way up until your end date as well. So you can stop working anytime before the end date or EAD card, but you do need to remember that whether or not you use the employment dates that are on those EAD card, the time issued to the EAD card for pre-OPT is going to be deducted from your post-OPT. Even if you don't automatically or ultimately rather use all of those days up, it does not go back on the post-OPT. If you've requested it and you've been approved for it, those days are gone at that point. So you don't have to use that work, but do keep in mind that you can't not use the work and then get those days back later. Now, can you do overtime when you have full-time pre-OPT? So again, remember the delineations in terms of when you can do part-time versus full-time here. Now, regulations don't state a maximum number of working hours per week. Thus, overtime is possible. However, we recommend that you should keep any overtime to a minimum. Primary activity on an F1 visa should be to study. So work really shouldn't interfere with your studies, and that's just something very good to keep in mind. Now, what types of work are permitted during pre-OPT? Well, as long as your position is related to your major, type of employment is flexible. The big requirement is going to be that it has to be within your field of study. But if you meet that requirement, there's a few different options you'd have. You might have paid employment or paid internship, direct work for hire. You could be self-employed. You could be employed through an agency or consulting firm. You could even be unpaid. It could be a voluntary employment. It could be an internship, a volunteer basis. All of those are permitted. So multiple employers are also permitted as long as you comply with authorized work hours. Keep in mind 25 or 20 hours is part-time. That would be what 20 hours is, and full-time is more than 20 hours. But again, all jobs and work must be related to your major. So definitely keep that part of it in mind as well. Well, thank you so much for watching our video here. Now, if you really enjoyed that and say, well, I thought that was great, I really enjoyed my time watching the video. The only thing I wish is that the person that was presenting it was live and that I could ask them questions live as part of the video here. Oh, well, it's a shame I'm not able to do that. Well, I have great news. You are able to do that. So please join us for a live event in the future. We always have webinars and programming and workshops going on. We have them going on for a wide variety of topics related to the international student experience. But in our office in particular, we talk all about immigration. We have some webinars going on this particular subject, on post-OPT, on CPT, on all kinds of other things too, always going on here. Just check out issc.asu.edu/events and you can see all the great topics, workshops, webinars we are talking about live. So you can join us in person, sort of, and ask us questions there. And we hope to see you there at some point. Thank you so much for tuning in. And please don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything we can assist you with. And bye for now.